All right, welcome. I just want to talk about the most disappointing teams of this 2023-2024 NHL season. I'm wearing my Sabres jersey, not just because they're on the board, but because they're perennially disappointing. Probably the most disappointing team of my lifetime. Sabres, I'm sorry. We'll start with the blue list. The blue list is essentially teams that people may have as disappointing, but I personally did not. So I didn't want to just exclude people and say my opinion's the only one right because it's not. But I do want to talk about some of these teams. Tampa, I think, is the most questionable. Tampa Red Wings are probably the most questionable on this list. Tampa, I think people were anticipating the Lightning being maybe a 3 seed, maybe being around 105, 107 points this year. They really haven't been. They're probably not going to reach that. They might hit 100 points, but with the roster, the team, and the players that have been to the Stanley Cup Finals in a Lightning uniform, there's a lot of them. I think the expectations were a little higher in Tampa for this year. They've been hot lately. I think they'll be tough in the playoffs, which is when it really matters. But for now, I think the regular season a little disappointing for them, especially Vasilevsky's play, very up and down. Red Wings, I think a lot of people had high hopes for the Red Wings. I really didn't. I figured they might be fighting for a playoff wild card spot, but I originally had them predicted to miss the playoffs. I'm starting the lighting's a little off in here as well. Please don't mind that. This is very, very rudimentary video right here. Red Wings, though, I think with the additions, with some of the young players coming up, another year of development with Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider, right? You got some solid pieces down the middle, right? I think there were higher expectations for the Red Wings, but in my opinion, just like Tampa, I think this is about where I expected them to end up. Penguins too. I didn't think they were going to be good coming into this year. As of late, I think they're like 3 points out of the wild card spot in the East. So there is a chance they sneak in, which would exceed my expectations. But I think a lot of people had them pegged as a wild card team at the minimum. Saw a lot of preseason rankings where Pittsburgh was in the playoff hunt. The acquisition of Erik Karlsson was pretty massive. I didn't think that was the piece that would help them push them over the edge. So for me, it's about right. They're about where they should be. They've exceeded my expectations slightly, but I still had them missing the playoffs. Ottawa Senators, a lot of people thought Ottawa, on paper, has the roster to make the playoffs, and in reality, I don't disagree. I think they have a very solid team top to bottom, in and out. I think their goaltending can be a question. I think their defense can occasionally be a question. But I've talked about this. We're going on since this channel started, well over a year ago. With Ottawa, it's finding the right coach. It's finding a way to play team defense. It's about defending appropriately and transitioning that defense to offense. Ottawa hasn't and continues to show no signs of evolving from that. And you're not going to win if you don't play defense. And if you right, and playing defense is playing team defense. All the good teams in the league play team defense. That's how they're successful, and that's really what brings their defensive stats to an elite level among the league best, is because they're getting buy-in from all 5 players on the ice, in addition to their goaltender. So I don't want to throw it all on Ottawa's goaltenders. They haven't been great, I'm not going to lie, but they also haven't been terrible. I think a lot of it really comes down to forwards playing defense. So Ottawa, not surprising, but I think a lot of people pegged them to improve, whereas they haven't this year. Vegas, a lot of people had Vegas either winning the division or coming in second, and the Oilers number 1 and 2. I haven't been high on Vegas. I am still not super high on Vegas. They have a great team. They have a great roster. Can they potentially win a Stanley Cup this year? Absolutely, they are contenders. But having the elongated Stanley Cup season last year and having some injury challenges as they always do this year, it's not super surprising that they're pretty decently in the mix. They should make the playoffs, and they should be healthy in the playoffs, which also isn't really a surprise. It's more of getting in for Vegas than it is the regular season. I think people thought they would have a better regular season, but in reality, this is the Tampa method. Just get in as the 3 seed, wild card, 2 seed. Great, you don't have to win the division because it really matters when you hit the playoffs. I also had questions about Aiden Hill becoming the full-time goaltender in Las Vegas. He's been good. I think he's injured right now. But they have guys that can step in, right? Logan Thompson's been fantastic as of late. Robin Leonard, I don't know. I still haven't seen him play a game yet. So next team, Los Angeles Kings. I think with that Dubois trade, a lot of people were high on Vegas, LA, and their center depth. And yes, their center depth is good, but again, not really a surprise. I didn't really, with the addition of Dubois and losing guys like Velarde and Iafallo, that hurts. It hurts your scoring depth. I mean, it helps your third line center position per se. Depending, I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was projected to play either on that third line as a center or get some second line opportunities with some power play time. That clearly hasn't panned out. The losses of Velarde, who is a 30 to 40 goal scorer, and Iafallo, who really helped drive this offense of LA, or at least were key contributing factors. Losing them, it really hurts. I don't think Dubois is good enough, even with like a point per game season, to compensate for the losses of those two players, because they're very diverse in what they bring as well. And Velarde's still a young kid; he's doing well up in Winnipeg. So the Kings, I think they took a bit of a step back this past season, and the standings would show that they're not a bad team. They can still make a push. They still have questions about their goaltending. Cam Talbot, is he the guy? What are we doing here? Disappointing teams I have, though. I got to start the list off probably with the most controversial. It's Toronto, and in no way, shape, or form has Toronto had a bad season. I don't even know what they're at for points. I think they're over 100. I have it right here. They're at 95. They're 20 points above the games played. So they played 75 games. They have 95 points. They should hit 100. They'll probably be around 104, 105. A lot of people had Toronto pegged as the number one team in the Atlantic Conference this year. I think including myself, I had them as number one, and I didn't even think it was going to be a close number two. Obviously, Florida and Boston have both been playing well, but the consistency of Toronto and where they finish in the standings in terms of their points and their roster, it's extremely consistent, right? So this is, I'd say, a bit of a down year, right? There's questions still on the depth scoring. There's still questions on the blue line. There's still questions in net. And there's questions behind the bench. And the four offensive players are really getting a majority of the criticism, which we've seen, but that's consistent. So Toronto, I expected them to be somewhere in the realm of like 114, 115 points this year, making a case for that President's Trophy. I don't see them. I mean, they can't win the President's Trophy right now. So yeah, they're already eliminated from that race. Sabres, I was really high on the Sabres. Maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. I forget which year. I had them making the playoffs, and they finished like second to last in the league. It was rough. This year, I think I had them projected as finishing 2 in the Atlantic Division. They are not even close to that. They're going to miss the playoffs. How many points outside do they sit? Math. 6 points right now with 6 games to play. They have a 4 teams minimum to jump to make the playoffs. So it's not happening for the Sabres. The goaltending has panned out to an extent. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has been solid. Devin Levi has had his ups and downs. He's been all right. Right. The defense, for the most part, it's been okay. It's still young. They're still going to make mistakes. It is what it is. But it's the offense that has really dried up in a sense. I think a lot of the offensive players are attempting a little more to focus on defense than offense and are not being successful in either end. The Sabres, yet another year, yet another disappointing year. New Jersey Devils, a lot of people had the Devils pegged as a Stanley Cup contender and a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. I know I had the Devils, the New York Rangers, and the Carolina Hurricanes, all three of them vying for that number one spot in the Metropolitan Division for my preseason standings predictions. The Devils are going to miss the playoffs. They're in the... they are below the Buffalo Sabres by a point. They have 76 points in 76 games. So at this rate, they'll finish with 82 points, which probably going to miss the playoffs by 10 or more points, it's a bad season for New Jersey. Bright side, they get a solid draft pick. That's good, I guess. But there's been a lot going wrong in New Jersey this year. Getting a goaltender too late in the season at the trade deadline, it's too late to fix that position. You go out and you get a guy like Jake Allen, and I do like Capo Kakinen. I am high on him. I always have been. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with those goaltenders. But it's also been the defense, too. You've had consistency issues from some of your blue liners. You've had Dougie Hamilton out, which, yes, he is an offensively oriented defenseman, but he can defend pretty well. He's evolved leaps and bounds in that aspect of his game, and I think it's at this point underappreciated. When he came into the league in Boston, he was not good defensively. He wasn't good. I think he was paired with Zdeno Chara, and Chara would have to do a lot defensively to cover up for Dougie Hamilton. But Dougie Hamilton has grown leaps and bounds, and I'm personally not a big fan of him on the ice. I'm sure he's a fantastic human being, but you have to give him credit for his defensive game, and that's really impacted the Devils' blue line. And that's just in the defensive aspect. He provides a lot of scoring, too. I think with that, the loss of Hamilton's offensive abilities, a lot of the defensemen are attempting a little more to step up in the zone than they normally would to provide a little depth scoring from that blue line. And again, it's starting to hurt them in the back end. There's a lot of little issues with the Devils. It might be video warrant or worthy. We'll see. But Devils, without a doubt, disappointing year this season. Columbus, they go out, they get Severson, they get Ivan Provorov in the offseason. They really solidify their blue line, which was really a bottleneck of that team. You have Merzlikins, he's a decent goalie, right? You have Tarasov, up-and-coming young goalie, he should be good, right? And it's crumbled. They've had injuries, they've had issues, but Severson, Provorov, both could be questionable in their own zone. They're more... Provorov is a little more offensively oriented, but Severson can be so hit or miss, and they rely on him for, I believe, a top 4 position on that blue line. And Severson, he's a guy you really have to manage your minutes with. If he's on the ice too much, he's going to be doing too much, which means he's a lot more prone to mistakes. So kind of in that third pairing spot, but they locked Severson up to a lot of money for a long time. So there are questions when that trade happened. What is Columbus doing? And those questions still remain. Right? So Columbus, I think I projected them to get better. I think a lot of people had hopes that they wouldn't be a bottom 3 team this year. But yeah, they're bad. What are they? They have 62 points. They're ahead of the Sharks, Blackhawks, and Ducks. Jeez, that's rough. But they're dead last in the East, and it's not even close. Man. Blackhawks, Sharks, and Ducks. Brutal records. Moving on, Minnesota. Myself, I think I had them I don't remember. It was either in third in their division or the wild card spot. Nobody was touting Minnesota up to be a Stanley Cup contending team, but a pretty steady projection to make the playoffs, right? They had extremely high chances of making the playoffs coming into this year. Clearly, it's been disappointing, and they've had a whole lot of aspects to why that's been, why that necessarily hasn't panned out. You can blame injuries, you can blame goaltending, you can blame defense, you can blame scoring, you can blame not really having a number 1 center for a majority of the year. And even now, you can kind of still debate if Joel Eriksson Ek is a number 1 center or just a very good number 2 center. Right? He's playing on the top line with Kaprizov and Boldy. Right? Marco Rossi is a rookie. He should get better. Right? But there's been depth issues at various pieces. Marcus Johansson spending the entire season stapled to that second line. I think he has 29 points this year in 70 plus games. It's terrible production from a top 6 winger, right? So there's a lot that's gone wrong in Minnesota, but a lot of people had them pegged to at least be a playoff team. I don't think a lot of people expected Minnesota to do anything in the playoffs, including myself, should they make it, but they've missed the playoffs, and it really hasn't. There have been glimmers of hope, but it's kind of been it's been a brutal season to watch of this hockey team. Seattle Kraken. This is also fairly debatable, kind of like Toronto. Some people were really high on Seattle. Some people were really low on Seattle. I was higher on Seattle. I thought they defended well. I thought they scored those gritty goals. They got those goals in front of the net. They can open up that defense and kind of shoot from the face-off dots and north of the face-off dot and get some decent blue line shots. And some of their blue liners were coming together. And their shot percentage, was a little high last year. But I think all the other metrics looked pretty solid. So I didn't think they'd necessarily be, a 100-point team, but I think I had them slotted as a wild card team. And looking, just looking at the wild card teams right now, Nashville Predators, who I picked to miss, and the Los Angeles Kings, Blues are really not in it. Wow, they are 7 points out. I figured Seattle would probably at the very least be in that mix. They are 16 points out right now, which is not good. So I thought Seattle would be better. I think a lot of people expected them to maybe take a step back, but I don't think anyone anticipated Seattle taking this big of a step back. So those are my most disappointing teams. I'll probably do a most, I don't know what's going to be called, impressive. I don't want to call it overachieving. Most disappointing, most exciting teams. I don't know. But I'm going to do the opposite of this video at some point soon. And then I'm going to have teams I leave out. I'll probably do a video on those teams and those expectations. I've included some here. I personally would say these teams are having about the season I've expected them to have. But again, it's not just a me opinion and I'm right, because I'm not. I picked the Buffalo Sabres to finish in second in their division this year, and they are not. They're not even close. So I am not right all the time, especially when it comes to hockey. So if you have any other disappointing teams, shout them out, throw them up there. Let me know what you think. If you agree, you disagree with any of these, please, conversations, good, positive hockey conversations, even if it's about a more negative topic. Constructive conversations are fun. Again, rudimentary video. Sorry for the lighting. I don't have all the bells and whistles going up right now. And even when I do, they're you're talking about like a desk lamp. So nothing overly exciting here. But I appreciate you guys watching. Take care, all right?